In a quiet corner of the Milky Way on a blue planet called Earth, humanity had grown strong, stronger than most species in the galaxy ever expected. Earth was known as a death world, a place where life evolved through endless challenges. Violent storms, deadly creatures, earthquakes, volcanoes, and diseases that could wipe out entire populations. But it was also the home of the most determined and adaptable beings the galaxy had ever seen: humans. The galaxy had long known about Earth. After first contact nearly 150 years ago, most civilizations quietly labeled the planet dangerous and marked humans as a high-threat species. Their technology was not the most advanced, but their will to survive and win was unmatched. Most alien species avoided humans. Not because humans were cruel, but because they never gave up, no matter how bad the situation got. If someone attacked them, they fought back until nothing was left standing. So when an SOS signal drifted into the edge of human space, no one expected humanity to care. The signal was weak, full of static and broken words, but it carried one thing clearly: a desperate plea. "This is the Alari people. We are under attack. Our colonies are burning. Please, someone, help us." The Alari were a peaceful aquatic race. They lived in floating cities on ocean planets and had no military of their own. Their technology focused on farming, energy, and medicine. They had never attacked anyone. But none of that mattered to the Karnak Dominion, a warlike empire known for expanding its territory through fear and violence. The Aelari's planet, Surayer, had been surrounded by a Karnak fleet of over 300 warships. No one responded to their cries for help. The Galactic Council remained silent. Other empires pretended they never heard it. Even the nearby trading species turned their ships away. But the message did reach Earth. Sol Defense Command, Earth orbit deep above Earth, in a giant rotating space station known as Sol Defense Command. The message was picked up by a long-range probe. The station was the heart of the Terran Union's military. Within minutes, the message was decrypted and sent directly to Admiral Alara Reyes, the commander of the Terran Fourth Fleet. She sat in her command chair, watching the flickering image of a terrified Alari child begging for help. "Estimated casualties?" she asked. "Over 10 million already," replied her tactical officer. "More falling every hour." And the Karnak response? "They've ignored all attempts at communication. Standard behavior. They assume no one will risk war to protect a non-aligned species." Admiral Reyes stood up. Her face was calm, but her voice was like steel. "They're about to learn what happens when humanity hears a cry for help." She turned to her officers. "Scramble the fleet. Full combat loadout. We leave in 3 hours." Mobilization of the Terran Fourth Fleet across the Sol system, alarms echoed in military spaceports. Massive battleships launched from the Martian docks. Carriers loaded with fighters rose from Luna Base. On the icy moons of Jupiter, stealth frigates warmed up their engines. The Terran Fourth Fleet was one of Earth's most powerful armadas, built not just for defense, but for rapid response anywhere in the galaxy. Citizens across Earth watched the skies as bright streaks of light marked the departure of ships. News networks asked, "Where are they going? And is this war?" No one knew the full answer yet, but they saw the determination on the faces of the fleet's captains, pilots, and soldiers. Humanity was on the move, entering Alari space. The fleet traveled through folded space, using quantum jumps to cross thousands of light years in just hours. When they arrived in Alari space, what they saw was worse than expected. Burning cities floated in the oceans below. Civilian transports tried to escape but were shot down by Karnak destroyers. The sky above the planet was filled with enemy ships, surrounding the world like a metal cage. The Karnak fleet didn't see the humans at first. Their sensors were focused on the planet below. They didn't expect anyone to arrive so boldly, without a warning or demand. But the humans didn't come to talk, they came to fight. The message before opening fire. Admiral Reyes sent a single message to the Karnak fleet, broadcast across all frequencies. "To the commanders of the Karnak Dominion, you attacked a peaceful species. You bombed civilians. You ignored surrender signals. We heard their cry. We are the Deathworlders. We have come. Stand down or be erased." There was silence for several moments. Then a Karnak warlord laughed over the comms. "You are brave for coming here, human, but your courage will not save you." He didn't understand. Courage had nothing to do with it. It was duty. First strike. The Terran fleet moved with terrifying speed. Human ships formed tight formations, shields overlapping, weapons already locked. In seconds, the space around Sci-Fi lit up with energy bolts, kinetic slugs, and laser fire. The first 10 Karnak ships were destroyed before they could react. Human targeting systems predicted their movements with deadly accuracy. Fighters swarmed like hornets, dodging blasts and firing precision missiles into engines and bridges. Karnak ships began to scatter, their commanders realizing too late that this was not a small rescue mission. This was a full fleet, trained for large-scale warfare, led by veterans of the Xanon Uprising and the Krell incursion. Within minutes, the battlefield shifted. Humanity was in control. The Aelari watch on the surface of Sci-Fi. Deep beneath the waves, the remaining Aelari watched through shattered viewing domes. They saw lights flashing in the sky and believed their end had finally come. But then something changed. A burning Karnak ship fell from orbit, crashing into the sea far from their city. Moments later, a human voice echoed through their emergency channels. "Aelari people, this is the Terran Union. We are here." "Hold on." The Aelari leader, Elder Nyril, could barely speak. You answered our call?" Admiral Rhea's voice came through clearly. "We heard you, and we don't abandon those who ask for help." For the first time in days, the Aelari wept not from fear, but from hope. The space above Sci-Fi had become a storm of light and fire. Explosions burst across the stars as the Terran Fourth Fleet clashed with the massive Karnak armada. The humans had arrived without warning, and now they were taking apart the enemy fleet, piece by piece. Inside the Terran flagship Vengeance Actual, Admiral Alara Reyes stood calmly at the center of the bridge. Around her, officers called out updates. "Enemy destroyer disabled. Frigate Group Bravo requesting support at Grid 9. Karnak heavy cruiser turning toward our flank." Reyes didn't flinch. She pointed at the holomap, a glowing image of the battlefield floating above the command table. "Shift Delta Squad to cover the flank. Bring up the Arc-class railgun. Now." A few moments later, a beam of magnetic energy lit up space. The shot tore through the enemy cruiser, splitting it in half like paper. Across the fleet, human ships fought with discipline and precision. They worked as one, sharing shield energy and covering each other's blind spots. Their weapons weren't the most advanced in the galaxy, but they were efficient, deadly, and accurate. They didn't fight with rage, they fought with purpose. Karnak confusion. On the bridge of the Karnak command ship Virox the Unyielding, High Commander Vrosk watched the battle with growing disbelief. "This can't be right," he growled. "They are outnumbered." His second-in-command, a nervous officer named Sarek, adjusted the holodisplay. "Sir, their formations are too tight. We cannot isolate them. Every time we flank one group, another human unit appears and counters." Vrosk bared his sharp teeth. "They're not just soldiers. They're Deathworlders. I should have remembered that." He had heard stories of humans, how they had defeated the Krell swarm, how they had turned back the Zarnak slavers, how they had survived where no other species could. But he had believed those were exaggerations. Now, he knew better. The boarding teams, while massive ships fought above the planet, small human boarding teams carried out a different mission. Fast and silent, they used stealth shuttles to slip through the chaos and latch onto enemy vessels. One such team, Squad Iron Fang, landed inside a Karnak troop carrier. They moved through narrow halls, disabling systems and capturing key officers. Their armor was dark and sealed, their weapons set to non-lethal mode when possible. They weren't there to slaughter. They were gathering intelligence. Sergeant Myra Holt, the squad leader, tapped into the ship's core system. What she found made her stop cold. "Commander," she said into her comms, "I'm uploading data now." They weren't just invading Sci-Fi, they were preparing to do this to 10 more planets. Back on the Vengeance Actual, Admiral Reyes read the files with a hardened gaze. They were planning a full extermination campaign, she said. She turned to her communications officer. "Send this to the Galactic Council, and to every species with a voice in the stars. Let them see what the Karnak were doing." The Aelari's first look at humanity, in the deep ocean shelters on Sci-Fi, the Aelari were watching the sky. Their communication systems had finally been restored by a human tech team. Now they saw the live footage of the battle above them. For many Aelari, it was the first time seeing a human. Some of them expected monstrous warriors, cold and uncaring. Others imagined cruel conquerors who might save them only to rule them. But what they saw surprised them. They saw humans risking their lives to protect escape pods. They saw damaged Terran ships blocking fire from falling debris to shield Ilari cities. They saw rescue teams delivering water, food, and medicine. Elder Nyril, the Ilari leader, whispered, "They didn't come for conquest. They came because we asked." The younger Ilari beside him, a girl named Miriel, looked up and smiled. They came because they're kind, not weak. Tactical brilliance back in orbit, the Karnak fleet was falling apart. Human forces had destroyed more than half of their ships, and still the Terrans showed no signs of slowing. The key to their success wasn't just their strength, it was their thinking. Instead of chasing ships at random, the Terran officers predicted enemy patterns. They cut off fuel supplies. They disabled communication relays. They jammed targeting systems. In a matter of hours, the Karnak went from attackers to desperate survivors. "They're running," one officer shouted on the bridge of Vengeance Actual. Admiral Reyes didn't smile. She gave a sharp nod. "Let them run. But mark every ship that jumps. We'll track them." The humans weren't finished yet. The ones who had caused this destruction would face justice, not just for Scifi, but for every peaceful world they had planned to conquer. Aftermath of the battle, when the last Karnak ship vanished into deep space, a strange silence fell across the battlefield. The stars were no longer flashing with light. The smoke trails faded, and the broken ships drifted like metal ghosts. The Terran fleet stayed in formation, watching for traps. But none came. On the ground, human rescue teams worked with the Ilari to pull survivors from collapsed buildings and flooded domes. Medical officers treated the wounded. Engineers helped rebuild power systems. No payment was asked. No territory was claimed, only one message was left behind. "You are not alone." Broadcast to the galaxy 3 days later, a video transmission spread across the galaxy. It showed the Karnak attacks, the destruction of cities, the terrified faces of Ilari children, and then the arrival of the human fleet. It showed how the Deathworlders didn't hesitate, how they fought, not for power, but for justice, how they brought hope where there was only fear. Species across the galaxy watched in silence. On planets far from Scifi, leaders rechecked their alliances. Merchant guilds added the Terran Union to their protected trade routes. And on many worlds, ordinary people began to say, "If ever we are in danger, let the humans hear us." The hunt begins, but not all was over. High Commander Vrosk had escaped with a small group of ships. They fled to a hidden region of space deep in the Demira Nebula, where sensors didn't work well and no star maps were reliable. There, Vrosk began rebuilding. He sent messages to old allies and planned revenge. "We were caught by surprise," he told them. "Next time the humans won't be so lucky." But what Vrosk didn't know was that humans never stop watching. Admiral Reyes aboard her ship looked at the latest reports from stealth drones. "He thinks he got away," she said quietly. "Let's show him what it means to run from Earth." The stars above Sirius were calm now. The explosions had stopped. The human fleet remained in orbit, watching, guarding, scanning. Below, the ocean world began to breathe again. But far away, deep in the Demira Nebula, the story was not over. High Commander Vrosk, leader of the failed Karnak invasion, had escaped. His remaining ships were hidden inside the thick gas clouds and twisting gravity fields of the nebula. His fleet was damaged but not broken, and he was not ready to surrender. Inside the nebula, Vrosk stood on the bridge of the Karnak ship, Void Fang, watching holograms of Scifi. His face was twisted in anger. "They humiliated us," he said quietly. "One species, from one planet, destroyed half our fleet." His officers stood silently, not daring to speak. He turned. "We were not defeated by strength alone. It was their tactics, their speed, their unity." Vrosk raised his clawed hand. "But this time we strike from the shadows. We will build, prepare, and crush them with our full power." He didn't know that even now. Humans were already watching him. The phantom cell in the dark of space. Just beyond the edges of the nebula, a small human stealth ship floated silently. It had no bright lights. Its engines were quiet. Its hull was designed to absorb and hide from almost every kind of sensor. Inside was a black ops team, known only as Phantom Cell. They were specialists in tracking, infiltration, and sabotage. They weren't part of the main fleet. They didn't wear standard uniforms. Their mission was simple: find Vrosk, learn his plans, report back. Lieutenant Arlen Dax, the team leader, looked at the glowing data on his screen. "We've cracked their signal code," he said. "We're reading their fleet movements. They're building something big, very big." Behind him, his second-in-command, Mira Cho, frowned. "Looks like they're preparing for a surprise counterattack." Arlen nodded. "Then we'll make sure it doesn't surprise anyone." He tapped his comms unit. "Phantom Cell to Vengeance Actual. We found them." The Ilari learned the truth back on Scifi. The Ilari were trying to recover. Their cities were broken, their waters polluted with debris, and their people grieving. But for the first time in memory, they had hope. Human engineers worked beside Ilari builders, helping rebuild domes and repair power systems. Human doctors treated injured Ilari with calm, steady hands. Children who had once cried in fear now stared in wonder at the tall, strange humans with their hard armor and gentle voices. Elder Nyril stood beside Admiral Ilara Reyes, watching a group of Ilari students talking to a human translator robot. "They seem so normal," Nyril said softly. Reyes smiled. "We are. We just come from a very difficult world." The Ilari leader turned to her. "Your people risked everything for us. You destroyed a fleet twice your size. Why?" Reyes looked him in the eye. "Because someone needed help, and we were strong enough to answer." Nyril was quiet for a moment. "And now?" Reyes' expression darkened. "Now we finish what the Karnak started, so no one else suffers like you did." Preparing for the final strike, inside the Terran Fourth Fleet, the atmosphere changed. The victory over Scifi was not the end. It was only step one. New orders arrived from Earth. High Command had approved Operation Iron Echo, a full-scale mission to eliminate Frosk's remaining fleet before they could attack again. Admiral Reyes stood before her captains in the command chamber. "The Karnak think they're safe hiding in the Demira Nebula. They're wrong. Phantom Cell has eyes inside their operation. We have their location, their fleet strength, and their attack timeline." She paused, letting the information sink in. "They're rebuilding faster than expected. In 3 standard weeks, they plan to strike 4 outer worlds. Civilian targets," gasps echoed in the room. "We won't wait for that to happen," she said. "We will enter the nebula, destroy their command fleet, and end this threat before it spreads." Every captain stood and gave the Terran salute. They knew what this meant, another war, and they were ready. The Karnak's last mistake, inside the nebula, Vrosk believed he had time. His engineers repaired broken hulls. New weapons were installed. He trained his remaining soldiers harder than ever. He held long meetings with his warlords, drawing maps, setting routes, choosing targets. "We will strike at their border colonies," he declared. "They will never expect us to attack so soon." But while he planned, human drones slipped deeper into his territory. They watched his ships, listened to his orders, measured every movement. One drone, no bigger than a bird, flew into the Void Fang's engine vents and planted a tiny signal beacon. At that moment, the countdown began. The signal is given from the edge of the nebula. The Terran fleet waited. Giant battleships, carriers, and destroyers floated in silent formation. Their weapons were armed. Their crews were ready. Inside Vengeance Actual, Admiral Reyes waited for one sign, the green flash on her screen that meant Phantom Cell had finished their mission. Then it came, a small, quiet ping. She didn't smile. She didn't speak. She simply raised her hand. "All ships, engage." Fleet enters the storm. The Terran Fourth Fleet entered the Demira Nebula like thunder rolling into a valley. Their engines roared as they powered through gravity storms and magnetic fields. Karnak ships, caught off guard, scrambled to defend their positions. But they had no time to organize. Human ships moved with perfect coordination, striking communication hubs, shield generators, and supply ships first. Inside the nebula, visibility was poor, but the humans had trained for that. Their targeting systems used new AI calculations, designed for battles in low light, unstable environments. It worked perfectly. The first wave of Karnak defenses fell in under 15 minutes. The Ilari watch again, back on Scifi 4. Ilari citizens gathered around broadcast domes as the battle reports came in. This time they weren't watching their own doom. They were watching their protectors strike at their enemies. They saw Terran ships dancing through fire. They heard the calm, steady voices of human pilots reporting their kills. They listened to audio of Admiral Reyes giving orders like a conductor of an orchestra. One young Ilari boy turned to his teacher. "Are they angels?" The teacher smiled. No, child. They're humans. Final moments of the void. Fang inside his command ship, Vrosk watched his fleet collapse. One by one his ships were destroyed. His warlords were dead or captured. His systems failed, his weapons jammed, and still the humans came closer. He slammed his fist against the wall. How did they find us? How? He looked out the window and then he saw a human ship appear in front of him. Bigger, stronger, faster. It was Vengeance. Actual. A voice came through his comms. Calm, controlled. High Commander Vrosk, this is Admiral Reyes. You started this war. We are ending it. His screens turned black. The Demira Nebula was still shaking from battle. Glowing clouds of gas flickered with light from destroyed ships. Fragments of metal drifted silently between glowing stars, the remains of the once proud Karnak fleet. And at the center of it all stood the Terran Fourth Fleet, victorious but not yet finished. Inside the flagship Vengeance Actual, Admiral Alara Reyes stood silently in front of the main view screen. The image showed a dark shape floating in space. The crippled Void Fang, the Karnak command ship. Target is drifting, her weapons officer reported. Shields gone. Life support failing. No escape pods launched. Reyes nodded. Prepare a boarding team. We take him alive. The fall of Vrosk. High Commander Vrosk sat slumped in his broken command chair. The bridge of the Void Fang was filled with smoke and sparks. Screens were shattered. The ship trembled from a damaged reactor deep below. He had never imagined defeat like this. He had faced rebellions, fought in planetary sieges, and crushed uprisings. He had ordered the destruction of cities and watched enemies burn. But now he sat powerless, surrounded by silence, except for the slow beeping of a dying ship. A low rumble passed through the floor. Then footsteps, human footsteps. Vrosk looked up as the door burst open. A group of armored Terran soldiers entered, their weapons ready, their helmets glowing faintly in the dark. One of them stepped forward. High Commander Vrosk, you are under arrest by order of the Terran Union. You will stand trial for crimes against civilian populations and acts of galactic aggression. Vrosk said nothing. He just stared, defeated. He knew this war was over. Ilari celebration on the water-covered planet Sariah 4. News of the victory spread like warm light after a long storm. Human ships flew in peaceful formation above the oceans. Supplies were dropped to damaged cities. Medical teams set up floating clinics. The Ilari people, once desperate and nearly destroyed Akon, began to rebuild. Elder Nyril stood on a cliff near one of the rebuilt domes. With him stood Admiral Reyes, watching as Ilari children played beside a Terran engineering unit. We had no weapons, Nyril said softly. No armies, no shields, yet we still live. Because you heard our cry, Reyes nodded. You're not the only ones who needed help. Long ago, before humanity left Earth, we were alone too. Now we know how important it is to stand together. The elder turned toward her. And what happens now? Reyes looked to the sky. Now, we make sure it never happens again. Justice begins in orbit above Sariah, aboard the Terran Justice cruiser Solaris. The trial of High Commander Vrosk began. Representatives from over 20 species watched the broadcast. The charges were read in full: targeting of civilians, use of forbidden weapons, destruction of neutral settlements, and planning genocide against the Ilari. Vrosk stood inside a reinforced chamber, hands bound behind his back. He said nothing. His face was hard, but his eyes showed the truth. Fear. The evidence presented by Phantom Cell, including secret recordings and captured plans, was undeniable. Even former Karnak allies turned against him. After 5 hours, the sentence was given. Guilty on all counts. You will spend the rest of your life in isolation on Lunar Station 9 under Terran protection. Some asked why he wasn't executed. Reyes answered simply, "We don't destroy for revenge. We fight to protect. Justice is stronger than vengeance." A new alliance 1 week later. A great meeting was held aboard the Terran diplomatic ship Unity's Hand, floating above Sariah 4. Leaders from different alien species arrived in peace to speak with Admiral Reyes and Elder Nyril. The Ilari officially joined the Galactic Concord, a peaceful alliance supported by the Terran Union. In return, humanity promised permanent defense patrols in Ilari space and aid in rebuilding. But something more important happened too. For the first time, species that had feared humanity began to see them differently. not as monsters from a death world, but as protectors, strong but guided by wisdom. A merchant from the Parnay Republic said it best: "They have the strength of fire, but they use it to light the dark, not burn the innocent." Earth responds back on Earth. People watch the events unfold on massive screens in cities, towns, and spaceports. Cheers erupted as the flag of the Terran Union was raised over the rebuilt dome of Scifi 4. Children asked questions about the Alari. Schools added new lessons about peaceful species and their ways of life. People lit candles in memory of those lost, both human and Alari. President Hanna Velasquez of Earth gave a short but powerful speech. "Today, we stood not just as warriors, but as guardians. We didn't conquer when we defended. We didn't take, we gave. And the galaxy is better for it." The message is sent across the galaxy. A special broadcast was sent by the Terran Union. It began with a simple sentence spoken by a calm, clear voice. "This is a message to all civilizations, friend, stranger, or unknown." The screen showed the destroyed Karnak fleet, then the rebuilt cities of Serai Mir, then the face of a young Alari girl holding the hand of a human soldier. "If you need help and you have no one else, Earth is listening. Humanity is watching. We are from a world of storms, fire, and wild things, but we have learned. We have grown, and when the time comes, we will stand between you and the fire." Vrosk's final view. High Commander Vrosk sat alone in a secure cell on Lunar Station 9, a quiet prison on one of Earth's distant moons. No weapons, no visitors, just silence. Each day he was given news reports, so he could see what he had failed to destroy. He watched as species he once ruled now traded freely with the Terran Union. He watched the Alari speak at the Galactic Council, protected and proud, and every time he saw the flag of Earth, he felt the weight of his defeat, not just in battle, but in spirit. The calm, before the next storm peace returned to the galaxy, for now. Human ships continued to patrol the borders of weak civilizations. The name Deathworlders still carried fear, but it also carried respect. The stories spread like stars across space. In quiet moments, children across different planets told bedtime stories of the humans who came like thunder to save the weak. They weren't called invaders, they were called heroes.
The oceans were calm again. Rebuilt cities sparkled under the twin suns. Alari children swam through coral towers with joy. Schools reopened. Music returned to the domes. And the people, once hopeless, now looked up at the stars with wonder. Not fear, but something had changed forever. They were no longer alone, above their world. Silent and steady, Terran patrol ships moved through the skies like guardians, a symbol of protection. A message to anyone who would dare harm the weak again. Earth watches now. Admiral Reyes, Reflex Admiral Alara Reyes, stood at the observation window of her ship. Vengeance Actual, watching the blue planet below. Her uniform was neat, her face calm, but her eyes held a deep quiet, one that only leaders knew. Behind her, Commander Juno, her second in command, spoke softly. "They're calling this the Sarai miracle." Reyes smiled faintly. "Miracle? No. It was blood, grit, and choice." Juno nodded. "Still, the galaxy is changing. The name Deathworlders doesn't scare people the same way anymore." Reyes turned from the window. "Good. Let them know what it truly means." "And what's that, Admiral?" She looked him in the eye. "It means we protect, even when it's not easy, even when no one else will." The Galactic Council votes far across space. In the glowing halls of the Galactic Council, representatives from over 60 star systems gathered for an emergency session. The events of Scifi had shaken the galaxy. Many species who had once feared humans now spoke of them with respect. The Alari ambassador, Elder Neril, stood before the council for the first time in their history. "We were weak. We had no weapons. We had no allies. But the humans heard our voice. They came not to conquer, but to save. And for that, we now live." He paused, his voice steady and clear. "We vote in favor of granting Earth a permanent seat on the council. Let their voice guide us as they have guided us through the dark." The vote passed, unanimously. For the first time, humanity had a seat at the table of galactic power, but instead of celebrating, Earth sent a quiet message. "We are honored, but we will remain watchful. Peace is not given, it is kept." The first Alari human school months later, A floating academy was built over the calm waters of Sci-Fi. It was the first joint learning center between the Aelari and the Terran Union. Children of both species studied side by side. Science, language, art, and history. The Aelari taught humans how to live with the sea, how to grow food underwater, and how to listen to the rhythms of ocean life. The humans taught the Aelari how to build stronger technology, how to defend themselves, and most of all, how to never give up. One Aelari child named Mirael became known for asking bold questions. One day she asked a visiting Terran pilot, "Why did your people come for us?" "You didn't know us. We had nothing to offer." The pilot smiled and bent down to her level. "Because someday you might help someone else. Just like we helped you." Phantom Cell. Still in the shadows and the dark corners of unexplored space, the Phantom Cell continued its quiet work. Though Vrosk had been captured, there were still others, scattered warlords, smugglers, and old empires hiding in the shadows. Lieutenant Arlen Dax and his team moved from system to system, gathering information, stopping threats before they grew. In one intercepted message, a rogue general from the Karnak's broken fleet warned, "Beware the humans. They don't come like conquerors, they come like the tide, silent, strong, and impossible to stop." The Phantom Cell smiled when they read that. They didn't want fear. They wanted peace, but peace, they knew, must be guarded. Earth looks forward. Back on Earth, things had changed as well. People no longer looked at the stars as unreachable dreams. They saw them as shared space. As a responsibility, the events of Sci-Fi were taught in every school. Monuments were built to honor both the Aelari lives lost and the Terran soldiers who never returned. The Terran Union created a new branch, the Peace Response Corps, made up of diplomats, engineers, rescue teams, and translators backed by defense units when needed. Not a military force, but a promise. We will answer the next call. And the one after that, humanity had become something new. Not rulers, not invaders, but guardians. A warning and a promise on the anniversary of the battle. Admiral Reyes gave a speech aboard the Unity's hand, now a symbol of peace. Her words were broadcast across dozens of worlds. "We didn't ask to be feared. We only asked to be left in peace. But when peace is broken, when innocents are hunted, when the strong forget mercy, then we will stand." She paused, letting her words sink in. "We are from a world that tried to kill us every day. We survived. We adapted, and now we use that strength for others. Let this be a warning to those who would harm the weak, and a promise to those who cannot fight for themselves." The final star that night, above Sci-Fi, a new star appeared in the sky. It wasn't a real star. It was a Terran beacon satellite, placed in orbit by the Fourth Fleet. It glowed softly with blue and white light. It carried a simple signal, repeating across frequencies, translated into dozens of galactic languages. We heard the cry. We answered. You are not alone. People from across the galaxy began calling it the Guardian Star. Children would point at it and smile. Elders would bow their heads in respect. Pilots would salute as they passed it in orbit. And on Earth, where the sky was now filled with memories of victory and sacrifice, a message was carved into the stone at the base of a memorial in New Geneva. From a world of storms, we brought calm. From the ashes of fear, we became hope. From death, we brought life. The end, or just the beginning, humanity had changed. The galaxy had changed. But one thing remained true. When the innocent called for help, when the weak cried out into the dark, the Deathworlders would answer every time, without hesitation.